Welcome back to the Point podcast. Everybody's doing well after the family day long weekend. As always, I'm your host, Noah Warren, and hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody enjoyed the weekend, the world of sports, all that fun jazz. And it's been a slow burn on the podcast lately. I realize that it's been busy on the home front. We exciting things are happening here at To the Point. I'm really looking forward um, to the announcement that I've been teasing for a long time, and that'll be dropping Friday. So Friday, around 2 p.m. Eastern, I'll be doing a live video on Facebook where I will share what we're doing here To the Point, what's coming, and some format changes, some time changes. So lots of new things happening. It's still going to be a lot of fun. I want it to be more interactive, but Friday at 2 p.m. you'll learn what's happening. And actually, here's a little teaser. It'll start Monday. So Monday, the new and improved To the Point will be unveiled. I hope you guys can all be a part of it. Hope you guys all join in on this really fun ride for all of us here at To the Point. And like I said, I'm doing this for me, of course, but also, I wanted to make it fun. I want to make it, you got to listen to me. You got to look at my face if you're on video every day. I want to make it as pleasing as possible for all of you. So looking forward to that on Friday. Prior to that, tomorrow, Seamus will join me, still working on the Anderson file, if you will. Busy time of year in the accounting business. Didn't know that, but I do now. And we'll talk all things sports tomorrow. And Seamus isn't going away. He'll be part of the new improved To the Point. It'll just be a little bit different what we're doing, but Seamus will still be on weekly. And looking forward to talking to him tomorrow about a bunch of different things around the world of sports, basketball, hockey. You know how it works with us. But getting back to sports, you look at the weekend, a lot of different headlines. You had the NBA All-Star game, which I couldn't care less about. But through that, you get a Chris Paul injury, who's out 6 to 8 weeks. There's only 7 weeks left in the NBA regular season. There's Phoenix Suns, who are the top team in the National Basketball Association. So a big injury there. They do have a 6-game cushion, but will he be ready come the playoffs? How will this team look then? Interesting storylines there. Coming into the break, Golden State Warriors have been on a slide. They've been playing some really lackluster basketball. There's rumors Draymond Green may not be able to return this season. That would be a huge detriment to this team. They got to hope James Wiseman can come back. You still have the Brooklyn and Philly of it all coming out today. You have, Ben Simmons saying that he's ramping it up this week, plans to be back soon. And actually, in early March, the Brooklyn Nets are scheduled to face the Philadelphia 76ers in Philadelphia. And it's even being talked about that game in Philly could be Ben Simmons's debut for the Nets in his first game of this 2021-2022 campaign. And I'll tell you what, I am all for this. I want this to happen. I want that to be his first game. And I'll give him, Ben Simmons is a great player with a lot of faults. And, in basketball, what is one of the most important things you can do? Well, the most important thing is, can you shoot? Ben Simmons has never had that ability. He can't shoot from 6 feet out from the rim. But through all that, we don't know what he's been working on since he's been sitting out all season. I have my doubts. He's got a shot that's a quick turnaround to really get a shot that's competent. But I do have to give him credit. If he can come back in this game and that's his debut, there's no harder place to play in professional sports, in my opinion, than Philadelphia. It doesn't matter if it's basketball, if it's hockey, football. You hear stories about the fans in Philadelphia, and they are insane. At Eagles games, it's talked about how, even Donovan McNabb, who was the starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, was hearing it game in, game out. Obviously some comments that were racially insensitive and are never okay, but also just loyal Eagles fans who berated him, who treated him like crap. You think of the Philadelphia Flyers, they had more of a different vibe. Back in the 80s and in the 90s, you went into the Philadelphia Spectrum, it was a war zone. Teams were afraid to play the Philadelphia Flyers. Walking out of that entrance, not only were the players intimidating, but the fans were as well. You never knew what this rabid bunch of lunatics were going to do on a given night. And that brings us, and of course, in hockey as well, before I get to my next point, is that there's crazy people too, where they're going to scream at you in hockey. When the team sucks, you're going to know about it. Every game, you're going to hear boos. I'm sure Carter Hart can tell you a firsthand account of why it's not so fun to play in Philadelphia when you're not at the top of your game. That goes to NBA. Philly, it's really hard to determine, where it ranks when it comes to priority in that city, because in hockey, it's very easy. If I look at it for Toronto, the Leafs are number one, clearly. Raptors and Blue Jays, I think, are close. I would go with the Raptors because they've recently won a championship, and that seemed to really fuel basketball in the country of Canada. But it's kind of it's a balancing act. Then you have baseball. You go through, I think you look at the Houston market. The Astros are the biggest ticket in town. It's not the Texans. It's football in the States, not in Houston. The Astros are the biggest get there. Obviously, the Cowboys in Dallas. I could go on. But when it comes to how much we love a team, I think Philly's a really hard one to gauge because they love their 76ers. The greats of all time, the great Philadelphia 76ers of all time, Moses Malone, Charles Barkley, Dr. J, Allen Iverson, are revered in Philadelphia. They are celebrated. When AI is courtside, it's as if he's going down the red carpet to a movie premiere. You are loved forever. And most of these players never won a championship in Philly. Barkley didn't. Allen Iverson got to an NBA Finals, only could win one game against Kobe Bryant and the stacked Lakers. But they're still revered because they were great and they gave the city of Philadelphia all they could. Well, Ben Simmons was really the initial start of what was known as the process, where in Philadelphia, they tanked. They said, we're going to lose games on purpose. It wasn't a Stephen Ross, Brian Flores, nudge, nudge, lose games and don't talk about it. Philly, it was very evident. It was in your face. We are doing the process. We want to get high-end draft picks. We want to get first overall picks as high as we can every year. And we're going to suck along the way. We're going to try to finish last. We're going to lose as many games as possible. And through this run, they benefited from that. They took Joel Embiid third overall, who after some lackluster years, injury riddled at Kansas, he is on the verge of winning an MVP trophy. They took Markelle Fultz first overall. He is another guy who doesn't know how to shoot, battled injuries, had his own mental health issues, and is now in Orlando. But really, the big piece that they landed was Ben Simmons, the guard out of LSU, who couldn't shoot in college, but I think they thought, we can get him a shot. Lonzo Ball was in college. He couldn't shoot. LaMelo Ball. There's plenty of players. Scotty Barnes with the Raptors. Young guys might leave college without a great shot. We can work with them to get one. And it never looked like Ben Simmons was working on it, or if he was never confident enough to use it in a basketball game. And although through all of this, Ben Simmons won Rookie of the Year. He was a 3-time All-Star, was first team All-Defense 4 times, a great player and one of the best passers in the game, despite being 6'10" and being a point guard. But it all crashed and burned last season when Ben Simmons, in 7 games against the Atlanta Hawks in the second round of the NBA divisional playoffs, took 3 shots in 7 games, had 8 turnovers, and it came to a head when he had the ball under the basket. A 6'10" jacked strong man had a 5'9" Trae Young below him, and he passed out of the paint. Trae Young had 2 options: get posterized, which could have happened, or foul the man. And the threat of being fouled, Ben Simmons was not confident enough to go to the free throw line. The man is a career 54% free throw shooter. That is the likes of Dwight Howard, Shaquille O'Neal, centers, big men who stink at free throws. That's where he lies. A pathetic. And you heard after the game, Joel Embiid talked about Ben Simmons. And Doc Rivers, his head coach, said, I don't know if we can win a championship with Ben Simmons. It was a truthful answer. It was an answer I respect a ton. But when it comes to public relations, when it comes to player management, if you will, it was a terrible answer. And that was it. The relationship was severed. Ben Simmons was never going to play for the Sixers again. Didn't play the whole year. Finally flipped to Brooklyn when James Harden was disgruntled yet again and wanted out of Brooklyn. So he's going to play this year. And his debut will be watched. It'll be talked about, even if it's not against the Philadelphia 76ers. But I want it to be. Because that game is going to be on national TV. That game is going to be one where people say, yeah, I'm a Leaf fan, but I really want to watch this game. This game there's games where you got to capitalize on viewership. You got to capitalize on marketability. This game has it in spades. Joel Embiid against his former teammate. James Harden playing his former team. Hopefully Kevin Durant can be back. What kind of reception is Ben Simmons going to be booed every time he touches the ball? I certainly think so. How does he handle it? And, thinking about it aloud here. Ben Simmons has talked this year about mental health. And do I believe fully that he's been dealing with mental health and that's why he's not playing game in, game out? I'll be honest, I don't. And that might sound insensitive. Mental health is it's a priority. It's something that's extremely important. I'm not downplaying the importance, the necessary, the conversation around mental health. But he was playing last year. If he has a great game 7 and Doc Rivers doesn't say that, I think Ben Simmons is still a Philadelphia 76er. But he struggled in that game. He struggled all series, and he's afraid of fourth quarters. He's afraid of the free throw line. I think that has some mental acuity in it. Don't get me wrong. But do I think Ben Simmons is dealing with depression, dealing with different things? Maybe. I don't know for certain, but I think there's something, and I talked about this with Simone Biles at the Olympics. If mental health is real, if it's something you're dealing with, I think it's something you have to deal with for more than just a minute. And what I mean by that is, we hear about players saying, well, I got this mental health issue, but you're back the next shift. That can't be it, because you can't go to get a stitch and then you can go get a stitch and come back. It can't be a mental health thing. There's a certain amount of time you should have to miss. It's like concussion protocol. If you fail it, you can't play that night. This isn't 20 years ago. To me, mental health should be dealt with. You have to go see a therapist and deal with it, because that's a real issue. That's that's bigger than basketball, you could make a decision that is terrible. Obviously, that could be life-threatening to you. So, I respect mental health. I think it's super important. I think it's something that needs to be discussed more openly. Bell Let's Talk Day. Talking about mental health is good. The company and the initiative, I don't trust as much. That could be my skepticism, because I don't trust big brands when it comes to doing good for the people. But what would be, and maybe the story is, and the great one is, he comes back that night in Philadelphia. He's going to hear the boos. But if he is dealing with mental health problems, if he's struggling to get through his time in Philadelphia, how he was treated, the ending, and the unsatisfactory ending, if you will, maybe going to that city, playing your old team, getting through a very tough night that is going to be tough mentally on a person that's dealing with mental health, or somebody that's just an average Joe. You're going to get booed. You're going to hear people say negative things about you. That's not fun. That's a drain. It's a long process that you just sit there and take it. So if he can endure the game, where he's going to play his first game since June, that's a long time. It's the end of February. It's going to be 9 months without playing an NBA game or more. So if you can get through it, even if you don't play well, you have turnovers, it's your first game of the season, you're going to be rusty. But you can get through the game mentally strong and say, I'm ready for the double-double of the back-to-back in Sacramento. I'm ready to go play 2 nights from now against the Phoenix Suns. And that's how you react to the game, and not get in your feelings, not get rattled by the home front. That would be a win. And I would serve 2 purposes. I think Ben Simmons would come out looking better, and it also would be great for me because I want to see how this fan base reacts. It's a game that I'll listen to with the sound on. That's rare for me. I don't like doing that. Hopefully Reggie Miller's on the call. But again, it's a super interesting conversation. I want his debut to be in Philadelphia. It's a high profile game. You say, well, TNT, ESPN games, that's not normally what I look for. Normally they stink because they play, all ESPN and TNT does is put the Lakers on TV. The Lakers stink. But this is a game, not only am I rooting for this to be a great game in March, I want this to be a playoff series. What if this could be a first round? That is ratings gold. There's nothing the NBA wants more. The first round of the NBA playoffs is by far the worst. In hockey, I think it's the best, the first round. NBA couldn't be worse because it's the good teams beat the bad teams 99 out of 100 times. Unless there's a big injury, something crazy happens, you don't see lower seeds defeat higher seeds. It rarely, the last time a number 1 seed in the NBA lost was in 2012. And that was the year Derrick Rose tore his ACL for the Chicago Bulls. It was led by Kirk Heinrich. Luol Deng did not play in that series. And the Philadelphia 76ers, led by Doug Collins, won that series in 6 games. The 8th seed in the East. It's rare. It doesn't happen every day. Now, maybe this year is different. You look at the bottom of the seedings. Brooklyn's a 7th seed right now. I wouldn't want to play Brooklyn. The Lakers are a 9th spot. I have way less faith in the Lakers than I do Brooklyn. I look at Brooklyn, you're going to get Ben Simmons back. He's an all-star. You're going to get Kevin Durant back, the best player in basketball back. Kyrie Irving. I think we could see a vaccine change. I mean, we're seeing vaccine mandates change around the world. It's going to be changing in Alberta. And for that matter, right now in Brooklyn, if you are a visiting player that is not vaccinated, you can play at the Barclays Center. You can play in Brooklyn, play a professional sport. However, if you reside in Brooklyn and you are not vaccinated, you cannot play. That makes no sense. It makes zero sense. So if you live there, you can't play because you're not vaccinated. But if you're from somewhere else, you've gone through the airports, gone through restaurants, there's no restrictions, you can play. It doesn't make any sense from, I don't understand. I thought New York, you'd think they'd be smarter than most states. I guess not. But I believe by the end of the season that in New York, in Brooklyn, that even if you're not vaccinated, you will be able to play professional sports. I believe you're going to be able to travel mostly around the world even if you're not vaccinated. And whether you agree with that or not, that's not the conversation I'm having today. This is what I think is going to happen. And I believe Kyrie Irving is going to come back. He's one of the best ball handlers of all time. Kevin Durant's a 7-foot monster. Patty Mills, Ben Simmons, Cam Thomas is a great player off the bench, a young rookie. This team is still very good. James Harden is gone, but I like Brooklyn in the long term more than Philly. And honestly, I like them better in the short term because as much as I like Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey's a really good player, and Matthias Thybulle is a guy that can guard, 1 to 5 position on the floor, they don't have Kevin Durant. They don't have Kyrie Irving, and Ben Simmons is going to be asked to be a part of the puzzle and not the centerpiece. He's going to be an edge. He's going to be that plant that's off to the side that you're like, why is that even in the puzzle? Kevin Durant is the snowman. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are in the middle of the puzzle. They're on the drawbridge. They are fighting the good fight. Ben Simmons is the guy in the back behind all the soldiers with his dagger drawn, ready to go to battle if he has to. He never had that ability in Philly. And with less responsibility, without the notion of being the savior, without, yes, he still is a number 1 overall pick, but Kevin Durant went number 2. Kyrie Irving went number 1. He is around other greats. He's around players that have gone high in drafts that can assimilate him into their grand scheme, into their puzzle, if you will. And it's going to be really interesting down the stretch to see what happens. But Brooklyn, Philly, I want that matchup. I want Ben Simmons in that game, and I want that matchup in the playoffs. But as you know, NBA is on hiatus until Thursday, the All-Star break. Again, the All-Star game, Steph Curry won the MVP. I know that. Again, that game doesn't interest me. But as you look at it, you got Miami and Chicago, both tied at the top of the East. Miami, no surprise. Chicago is a bit of a surprise to me. They've been a really good story. DeMar DeRozan has had 6 straight games of 35 points or better. That's tying Michael Jordan. Crazy stat. You have Philly and Cleveland and Milwaukee all tied for third with 35 and 23 records. You got Philly coming back against the Timberwolves, Milwaukee coming back against Brooklyn on Saturday, which should be a good game, and Cleveland returns against the Pistons. You have Boston in 6, who have caught a heater. They lost to the Pistons in the last game. They will play the Brooklyn Nets on Thursday. The Raptors are the 7th seed. They play the Hornets Friday night when they make their return. You have Brooklyn as the 8th seed. Charlotte's in 9th. They're 2.5 back. Atlanta is tied with Charlotte. And you have Washington's a game back of both of those teams. So I would definitely say Charlotte and Atlanta both were playoff teams last year. They're on the outside looking in. They'd be in the playing game, but Atlanta's got to be disappointed with the way they've started their season. Out west, you have Phoenix. Again, they lose Chris Paul 6 to 8 weeks. Huge loss. I think he's top 3 in MVP. He's got a right thumb fracture, which is the same injury porn star Jimmy Garoppolo had in the postseason in the NFL. So it's a serious injury. But they got Cam Payne, they got Cam Thomas. Devin Booker is gonna have to take a bigger take more of the responsibility. But he's a good player. Again, this team has a lot of depth, so you got to like what they got. So I'm not overly concerned about Phoenix. Golden State, they've been struggling. They're 6.5 back of Phoenix, only a game and a half up on Memphis, who sit in third place. Golden State returns Thursday night in Portland. Memphis will play the Timberwolves on Thursday. Utah is in the fourth seed. They are 4 games back of Memphis, so they have a ways to go. They've been struggling. They lost to the Lakers their last game before the break, and Donovan Mitchell actually missed the All-Star game. So Mavericks will play the Jazz. Mavericks have, they trade up Porzingis. Doncic's been playing well. Denver, Denver's been a good team. Nikola Jokic has been phenomenal in the season. He's averaging 26 points per game, 13 rebounds, 8 assists. And, he was the MVP last year. I think he's right in the mix again this year. We'll see, if they can get Jamal Murray back, if they can get some players. But otherwise, I don't see this team being a big threat in the playoffs. Minnesota's the 7th seed. They didn't make the playoffs last year, so they've been a good story. Karl Anthony Towns, averaging 24 a game and almost 10 rebounds. And he won the 3-point shooting contest as a big man. Clippers are in 8th ahead of the Lakers. They play each other Friday night, and they are currently a game and a half up, followed by Portland, who sits in the 10th seed, who are playing extremely well despite trading off players and Damian Lillard being out for the season. So I do think the NBA season will be interesting down the stretch. What do the Lakers do? Can they keep it together in Lakerland? I think you see, LeBron James clearly did not want to keep Russell Westbrook. I believe he wanted to trade for John Wall, who's currently on the Houston Rockets, not playing, hasn't played at all this year. But, I think at the deadline, he made a symbol that he thought Rob Pelinka should make a move. He thought he should go acquire John Wall. But he's stuck with Russell Westbrook. He's not getting off that contract. He's there for the rest of the season. Anthony Davis is hurt. So, again, I don't feel that much sympathy for LeBron James. And the reason for that is because he chose Russell Westbrook. They could have went down a different route where they could have went and got Buddy Hield. They could have got players in Sacramento that were great 3-point shooters, that were more LeBron types, if you will. Kyle Korver's, Kevin Love's, Rodney Hood, guys, Mike Miller in Miami, guys that he weren't huge pieces, but he liked the way they played. They played tough defensively, they'd shoot threes, and they're instrumental in LeBron's championship runs. Instead, I'm sure he thought, I'm in year 17 or year 19. I'm tired. I need a guy that can control the ball, that is an all-star, that's going to go to the Hall of Fame. Well, Russell Westbrook leads the NBA in turnovers. He is shooting below 30% from the 3-point line. He is, for a guy that is going to be a Hall of Famer, this is a tough thing to say, but he's a stupid basketball player. I've never seen a guy dribble the ball more and step out of bounds. It's at least once a game he steps out of bounds. He's behind the back, behind the rim, steps out of bounds. I've never seen it. He just loves to turn the ball over. And it's almost 60 games into the season. It's not going to get much better. You know what you're going to get from Russell Westbrook. So, and I don't see the Lakers asking him to come off the bench. I've said this from day one of the season. They should ask Westbrook to come off the bench. It's what's best for the team. But the guy has an ego bigger than Los Angeles. So that's not going to happen. But this team is not going to go anywhere with the way they play. They play a stupid brand of basketball. They don't play together. It's not a great unit. And the fact that they trail the Clippers, who Kawhi Leonard, their best player, hasn't played a second all year. Paul George has been out over a month. The Clippers are a bunch of ragtag players. Reggie Jackson, Marcus Morris Sr., Luke Kennard. They have good players, don't get me wrong, but they don't have a superstar. And yet the Clippers beat the Lakers in their last matchup. The Clippers are ahead of the Lakers in the standings. And the Lakers should be ahead of the Clippers in the standings. And I do think by the end of the year, they will be. Because I look at it, the Lakers, I don't know how high they can go in the standings. I think they can pass the Clippers. Minnesota's tough because I think Minnesota's a good basketball team. I think Minnesota, they're never going to be great, but I like Karl-Anthony Towns. I like some of their pieces. So I don't know if they can pass Minnesota. I think Minnesota's a confident team. They feel like they can go on a run. They feel like they can at least get to a playoff position, potentially be in a spot where they don't have to play in the play-in game, which would be huge for them. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Timberwolves Lakers as a 7-8 matchup in the play-in tournament. So interesting storylines down the stretch. How will LeBron react? Tomorrow me and Seamus are going to talk about LeBron's comments over the weekend regarding his son. I think it's super interesting. We'll touch on it more tomorrow, but here's just a little tease. He said over the weekend, first of all, he said he'd return to Cleveland where he started his career, but he also said that his last season in the NBA would be played wherever his son, Bronny James, aka LeBron James Jr., is located. Wherever he gets drafted, wherever he is, that's where LeBron James is going to go. Said it's not about money at that point. It's about, legacy and get to playing a year with his son. And we'll talk about Bronny's credentials, what he's doing in the game of basketball. But I think it's a big statement from LeBron, but I do think this has a bigger impact and there's a bigger conversation here when it comes to the kid that we're talking about here. So me and Seamus will get into that tomorrow. Also, over the weekend, we saw, the NHL was not on pause. The NHL is back from the All-Star break. Teams are going through their bye weeks, but there's still games going. Family Day, lots of afternoon hockey. Saw the big win by the Bruins against the Avalanche. But the team that dominated the headlines over the weekend for the right and the wrong reasons were the Toronto Maple Leafs. And it really started with a trade that they made. And just to start off, the Toronto Maple Leafs traded for Nick Ritchie to the Arizona Coyotes, to Ilya Lyubushkin, Ryan Dzingel, and they also sent a conditional draft pick to Arizona as well. Nick Ritchie was signed to a two-year deal at $2.5 million. It had not worked out. Started off the year on the top line. Was currently playing on the Marlies, on waiver, struggling, just didn't fit in Toronto. It never worked. And to his credit, this was the one real flop for Kyle Dubas. If you look at his offseason, David Comp has fit in and been a very effective third-line center. Michael Bunting has replaced Zach Hyman with Marner and Matthews. He's been extremely effective on that line. You also have Andre Kasha, who has been a solid player for them. So his gambles have paid off. Ritchie did not. And if you look at the deal, I think it's a solid trade for the Maple Leafs because you get rid of a contract that you had to get rid of because he was taking up salary cap space, which you only had $250,000 in cap space heading into last weekend. They had to send Rasmus Sandy down. They had to make moves. But also, you get Dzingel, who they put on waivers and then lost to the San Jose Sharks. Can't do anything about that. But the big prize here for Toronto is Ilya Lyubushkin, who is a hard-nosed type defenseman, very much defensive-minded, not a guy that is going to put up a lot of points, not flashy, but a good competitor and something that the Leafs need because through this trade and through, like I said, a couple of headlines that weren't so great when it comes to their play, what's become clearly obvious to anyone that knows hockey and has become clear to me prior to this weekend, but it seems to be picking up steam now in Toronto markets because they lose a few games. And even when you win games, when you don't play that well, you still get that little boost from the 2-letter, the 3-letter, but we won't talk about them right now. But I look at Toronto and what was, like I said, what was clearly obvious to me, if you listen to me, if you're a fan, I've been saying this. They don't have a good enough defense core to win a Stanley Cup. clear as day. They don't have a good enough defense core to win a playoff round, in my opinion, because of the division they play in. If they were playing in the Pacific Division out west, sure. Yeah, I think you can get by it. You can work around it. But with poor defensive play and lackluster goaltending, that's going to make it look really, really tough on your defense score. And you look at it, you trust Morgan Rielly's had a great year. Again, I'm not his biggest fan. I still don't think Morgan Rielly's a number one defenseman, but he's a serviceable guy. I think he's playing better than he did a number of years ago when, he was up for the Norris. I think he's had a very solid season. He's great. Other than last night, TJ Brody is the most solid player for the Maple Leafs on the back end. 9 times out of 10, you know what you're going to get from Brody in the game in, game out basis. He makes limited mistakes. He makes the easy play, but it's the smart play. He gets the puck out of the zone. And with some of the guys that they have on the back end, you need the smart, you need the easy play, because I'll go through it. After that, obviously Jake Muzzin who should be your number 3, but the guy has been inconsistent is being nice to Jake Muzzin. The guy's been out to lunch from the start of the season. And, I feel for him because it seems like every time he's trying to get back into the swing of things, every time it's a big moment, the guy seems to get injured. The past 2 postseasons, he's gotten injured. He's like Nazem Kadri, except an injury. You knew Nazem Kadri was going to get suspended for the Maple Leafs. Jake Muzzin seems to get hurt in the playoffs. Well, that is a storyline here. That's a worry, no doubt about it. But it's also Jake Muzzin hasn't played well. Going into the playoffs the last 2 years, he was playing at a very high level. You could argue last year going into the playoffs, he was their best defenseman. Actually, I don't even think it's that big of an argument. He was playing better than Morgan Rielly. But this year he's been atrocious. And you could put some of that on Justin Hall, no doubt about it. But at the same time, Jake Muzzin is a 2-time Stanley Cup winner. He's a veteran defenseman. You're supposed to make up for your D partner's deficiencies. He hasn't been doing that well enough. And he's been creating a ton of turnovers himself. So there's a worry. But after Muzzin, after you get through the 3 that are supposed to be high-level defensemen, you get to Rasmus Sandy, who is a good player. Don't get me wrong. I like him. I think he still has a lot to learn, a lot to grow with. But if you go into a postseason, you don't want Rasmus Sandin, a young defenseman with limited playoff experience who was healthy scratched in Game 7 last year against Montreal, to be your number 4, because he's not ready for it. It's not fair to him to expect that. This isn't Drew Doughty where you can just say, okay, he's a young kid, let's play him at the Olympics, he'll win a cup the same year. That isn't the situation here. That's not who Rasmus Sandin is. Also, he's a thin guy. He gets muscled off the pucks really easy. The game is much more finesse. It's much more skill. It's much more speed now. But you watch the last 2 games for Toronto against St. Louis, who are a burly team, tough to play against. They wear on you. Rasmus Sandin had a really tough night. He struggled. He played with Muzzin at times. That pair did not look good. But you look at that team: O'Reilly, Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, Ivan Barbashev, Vladimir Tarasenko. Those are big, heavy forwards. Tampa, you could look at them and say, okay, they're not a heavy team, but they turn into one because they're chameleons. They can play whatever game you want in the playoffs. Braden Point will take you off pucks. Steven Stamkos will get physical when he has to. Kucherov, the same thing. He's a physical cat. He gets pissed off. He'll lose it. He has a screw loose or 2 in there. And don't even get me started on the bottom end of their lineup and how girthy and how strong they are. So you don't want him in a situation where Rasmus Sandin is playing 20 minutes a game. He's a 5th, 6th defenseman right now. So you say, okay, well, it can't be him. Well, then you get to Justin Hall. Justin Hall has been like Muzzin, a problem. Unreliable, inconsistent, a guy that's been more trouble than he's worth. And I look at him and say, you're a fifth, sixth defenseman. You turn the puck over too much. You make the wrong play more than you make the right one. And unlike TJ Brody, a lot of these league defensemen don't make the smart play, don't make the easy play. They say, okay, let's make it more difficult on ourselves. And it's infuriating to watch. Travis Dermott has experience, but again, he's not a guy you want to play come playoff time. And what I'm getting to, you can add Timothy Liljegren to this group. I wouldn't want to play. I think in a perfect world, and this isn't even a perfect world, you play two of them. You play, if I had to pick, you're going to obviously play Muzzin if he's healthy. You're playing Brody, you're playing Riley. I would probably play Hall and Sandy because I like them more than I like Dermott, more than I like Liljegren. Hall and Sandy on that third pair, they're not going to play that much, if you ask me. It's going to be tough to go through the postseason with them. Obviously, I think Lyubushkin, being acquired, is there to add depth to this defense core. But Lyubushkin is a fifth, sixth defenseman. He's not a guy that's going to play top 4 minutes. I do think he's an upgrade over what they have, so that's a positive. But also, it's a luxury to have an abundance of defensemen at the fifth, sixth level that you trust to go in and play. But it's not a luxury when all of your defensemen are fifth, sixth defensemen. After the top 3, but Muzzin hasn't played like a top 4 defenseman this year. So on Toronto right now, you have an elite 4 group with one of the best players in the NHL in Austin Matthews. Mitch Marner is a hell of a player. You look around the depth of this team. Mikheya's playing better. Kasha, if he can stay healthy. We'll get to the rest of the team. But you have pieces that you like, no doubt about it. But it's only a luxury to have defensemen sitting in the press box that can fit into the bottom of a pair when you have guys that you trust above them. Toronto does not. I just look at the team and say, I don't trust. And I heard an argument the other day. How Florida doesn't have a great defense core either. Okay. Well, is Lucas Carlson a great defenseman? No. Do I trust him in the playoffs? No way. Do I trust Aaron Ekblad? I do. Aaron Ekblad is playing some of the best hockey of any defenseman in the world. He's had 6 points in his last 3 games, 8 in his last 4. The guy has 47 points in 49 games. And, this is for all the dinosaurs out there. This is just to tell defensemen how you're really playing well. He's a plus 35 on the season. Pretty damn good. I trust him. Gustav Forsling, he doesn't ring off the charts, but Gustav Forsling's better than Dermott. He's better than Sandy. Radko Gudas is a guy Toronto would love to have. He's just a solid defenseman. He's mean as hell. Lyubushkin, they got to hope, has a bit of that. Brandon Montour, I like Brandon Montour a lot. He's an offensive defenseman that gambles. He's a guy that he's going to piss you off sometimes when he makes plays. He reminds me a little bit of Cam Fowler, oddly enough, because they played together in Anaheim. I like him more than Cam Fowler. But again, he's a guy that has offensive upside. He can move the puck, and you're not worried about him. Will he make mistakes in playoff games? I think he will. But I like him more than I like Travis Dermott. Sandy, you know where I'm going here. And then they finish off with Mackenzie Weegar. Weegar's a great hockey player. He might have went 206 overall in the draft in 2013, but the guy's turned himself into a great defenseman. He's got 30 points in 50 games, but the guy is solid. So this isn't just, you're picking on Toronto. No, their defense core is weaker than the opposing teams. And what goes unnoticed, and what I think it is really unfair, is I watched the game last night against Montreal. First of all, it's embarrassing enough to lose to Montreal despite them winning 3 in a row, which is what I said might happen with the new coach bump. And if they lose that first what would be so poetic is if they start winning games, they lose the draft lottery, and they keep Martin St. Louis, and he's going to be fired in like a year anyway. So Montreal fans, good luck with that. But you lose to Montreal, that's embarrassing enough. But the game, it really wasn't that close. It turned out to be 5-2. They get a couple garbage goals in the third period to make it seem competitive. People didn't watch the game, just look at the box score. But you look at last night, I counted 9 odd man rushes for the Montreal Canadiens. There was 3 times, 2 of them by Josh Anderson, where he snuck behind the Leafs defenseman and got clean looks on Peter Mrazek. And Mrazek might have let in 5 goals on his first 24 shots faced last night. But that wasn't his fault. The second goal, yes, I look at Caulfield's first goal off the Anderson pass. You got to make that save. But how about some defense make a play? How about you box somebody out? First goal, Josh Anderson just plows to the net. How about somebody does something? Get the puck out of the zone. Don't get hemmed. You're playing Montreal. And I get it. There was a unicorn sighting last night. My guy, Josh Anderson, loves to play against the Leafs. But it just shows when you don't play good defensively in front of somebody, your goaltending is not going to be as good. Mrazek had been playing good hockey prior to last night. Jack Campbell had been struggling. But I also think you got to look at it and say this team defensively lately hasn't been very sharp. They haven't been locked in. They've been giving high-quality scoring chances to the opposition night in, night out. These other teams don't, is the point I'm trying to make. There are teams that do, and they're not going to win. The Washington Capitals give up a lot of high-quality scoring chances. They're a team that's going to lose in the first round of the playoffs. I bet $20 with anybody that Washington loses in the first round of the playoffs. To me, I look at Toronto and I say, if you play Tampa, if you play Florida, you're not going to win that series. Unless this defense core is really improved. Lyubushkin's a nice add. It's a good trade for Kyle Dubas. But it has to be the start of something. The Leafs are built to win now. It's not learning anymore. It's not, well, we have to go through lessons or whatever stupid school analogy you want to throw on the table. It's win now, because eventually, what will Toronto become? The better regular season Edmonton Oilers, where you're full of star players, you're full of guys that get great points, win Rocket Richard trophies. It's all great. It's all good in the hood, if you will. But then you get to the playoffs and you're home golfing before your parents can throw on the damn TV. And this team doesn't have many draft picks. They don't. Just to look this up on the fly, you're going to have to be creative. And it's almost stupid for me to say this because I don't think they're going to do it. They're likely not going to do this. But I think it's something they should explore. And they got a couple. They don't got a first. They don't got a second. They traded them away. So it's just where do they go from here? This big 2023, they got a first. They got a second. But do you want to trade away all that draft capital? But this is what I think should be on the table. And I've said this and I stand by it. To win in the postseason, it's more important to have a really good defense and solid goaltending than it is to have great forwards. Otherwise, Toronto would already have won a cup. Edmonton would have already made a path, wouldn't have got swept last year, the Winnipeg Jets. Toronto should explore a big trade. I said John Klingberg isn't the right guy for Toronto. But the more I look at this team, they need a shakeup. They need another great. I don't trust Jake Muzzin to get there. And you're too many fifth defensemen on this damn roster. John Klingberg is a impending unrestricted free agent. It is unlikely that you would be able to retain him. Maybe you can make it work, but I think John Klingberg is going to want a hefty raise, somewhere in the $7 to $9 million range. Would I pay him that money? Hell no. But this team needs a great defenseman. Jack Campbell's a good goalie. We don't know what he is in the playoffs, but you look around, Sergei Bobrovsky has no playoff history. He's won one playoff round in his whole career, one more than Jack Campbell. Obviously, Vasilevsky's an entirely different story. Tristan Jarry never won a playoff round. Ilya Samsonov never won a playoff round. Jeremy Swayman never won a playoff round for the Boston Bruins. We can go down the line here. There's a lot of inexperience when it comes to goaltending in the Eastern Conference. There's Tampa, and you have some experienced players on rosters like Bergeron, Marchand, Sidney Crosby. When it comes to the goaltending position, you look around and say, well, who do we trust? It's anybody's game. So what I'm saying for Toronto is they should explore trading William Nylander. And, I don't like saying this. People tell me I look like Bill Nylander. I take that as a compliment because I think the guy's a pretty good looking cat. But and this isn't about Bill Nylander's play. I think John Tavares hurts Bill Nylander more than Bill Nylander hurts John Tavares. But he's on a ticket that teams would be intrigued with. They'd say, Bill Nylander, good player. He can score us 30 goals, 65, 70 points. And we know what we're going to get from him. Is he the greatest defensively? No, but he can create offense on a team if we need it. And maybe John Klingberg isn't the answer. Maybe there's another deal. What about Philly? Philly lacks scoring. They're likely going to trade Claude Giroux. They're likely going to part, but potentially with more pieces. Do they trade Cam Atkinson at the deadline? What happens with Carter Hart? Well, you're going to need scoring. Sean Couturier has back surgery. He's not going anywhere. He'll be back. But is Ivan Provorov in the long-term plans of the Philadelphia Flyers? And this would require more than Bill Nylander for Provorov, in my opinion. But would Philly be willing to part with Provorov to acquire Bill Nylander plus? Because Ivan Provorov is signed to a long-term extension. He's a guy that has his ups and downs. I don't love his play all the time, but he's an intriguing player. He's young. He's got a $6.75 million cap hit. That's what Bill Nylander makes. He's 25. He's got many years left. He's got 3 years left on his deal at $6.75 million. So you got some years left on this deal. Chuck Fletcher gave him this deal, but you're getting a guy for 3 years after this one. So Philly would be getting a winger with term. The Toronto Maple Leafs would be getting a defenseman with term. Toronto doesn't like unrestricted free agents, and I understand that. Because if you were to trade a guy like William Nylander, it would be hard to sell trading him for John Klingberg. Klingberg walks for nothing if you don't win a Stanley Cup. But what about Ivan Provorov as a player? That's a trade to me is going to be tough to pull off. I think, again, they make similar salaries, so it's not completely out of the woods. Provorov has 19 points in 47 games. He's having a terrible season. Terrible. But he's on a brutal team as well. I think a fresh start would do him well. He went 7th overall. Nylander went high in the draft. Nylander played very well in the playoffs last year. And maybe Provorov isn't the guy Toronto's targeting. But I think they have to make a big splash. Nylander's 25. They went in the same draft, a pick apart. Nylander this season has 47 points. He's having a great year. Again, this isn't about him. He had 42 and 51 last year, so he's having a great season, almost point per game. But to get a great defenseman, this team is going to have to lose one of its big pillars. You're not trading John Tavares. Nobody wants him. He has no value, and he has a full no move. If you wanted to trade him, which you do, you can anyway. What else? Well, you're not trading Mitch Marner, despite what I'm sure some people would like you to do. You're not moving Austin Matthews. Morgan Rielly just re-signed long-term. Nobody's checking Jake Muzzin and his head trauma. That leaves Bill Nylander. He's the last big ticket on the roster. Trading Alex Kerfoot for a player of his salary is dollars and cents. This is something I really think the Toronto Maple Leafs should look at, because Tavares I worry about. But you look at this team, they got depth for a reason. Spezza can play in the playoffs. Kerfoot played great in the playoffs last year. Mikheyev looks like a better player. Marner and Matthews, it's about them. Do you fully believe in them? Because if you do, you're going to say, guess what? We might have traded away your buddy, but this is because we think we can win a cup right now, and it's you guys are going to have to drive the bus. Because Point did it, Kucherov did it, can you? Pushing those chips in for a guy like a Provorov, who isn't playing great hockey, I give you that. But I do think they need a defenseman that can be a difference maker, that can change your outlook as a franchise, that can be just a player that you look at and say, I didn't see that coming. Wow. Maybe we can do this. There's only so many of those players out there. I love Ben Sherratt. He's a great depth piece, but that's not going to change your team. Drew Doughty's not moving from LA. You're not getting Mo Sider from the Detroit Red Wings. So you're running out of options. I look at that potential mesh. I think it could work. I think it could work. Again, you look at getting elite defensemen is so important. Teams don't like to part with them. I don't think Buffalo would trade Rasmus Dahlin. I'd inquire. Dallas not trading Miro Heiskanen. San Jose, they don't have a defenseman. They pay you to take Erik Karlsson. I don't want him. Seth Jones just signed in Chicago. Believe me, as much as people might say, well, Seth Jones isn't what he used to. Okay, I'd still take him. Believe me. I still take him on my team. But to me, the smartest thing, the biggest splash the Toronto Maple Leafs organization can make is acquiring an elite level defenseman. It would signal. What have they done in the past? They got Brian Boyle, depth piece. They got Thomas Buchanan, depth piece. Even Nick Foligno. It's all forwards. They got Muzzin a few years ago. That was a difference maker. But you got to look at your team and say, we have too many guys that are fifth defensemen. Rasmus Sandy may be a number 3, maybe a number 2 down the line. But are Matthews and Marner still here when he is? I'm not so sure. You have to capitalize on the opportunity that's in front of you. Because otherwise, you're going to get to the playoffs, and maybe you get a depth piece. Maybe you go out there and you find a defenseman that you like. You get a Justin Braun from the same Philadelphia Flyers. But he's a 5th, 6th defenseman again. He's a defensive D that's just going to be there. Provorov could change your outlook of your team. He could play in your second power play. You got You got Riley and Brody. You got Muzzin and Provorov, a puck-moving defenseman with a stay-at-home defenseman. A perfect blend. Voynov, Matt Green, Doughty, Jake Muzzin. LA did it. They had this combination. They won 2 Stanley Cups. I don't think this happens. But if it does, you heard it here first. Because I think if the Toronto Maple Leafs truly want to give themselves a realistic chance to win, let alone a playoff run, that's not a success this year. If Toronto Maple Leafs win, that's not a success. It isn't. You have a team that's built to win a cup. It can't be, oh, we win a playoff round, let's celebrate. No, those days are over. Keep your eyes on Philly. Team stinks. Claude Giroux will get traded. Do I think Justin Braun, I expect to be moved at the deadline? Do they move Martin Jones? I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. He's the backup goalie there. Konechny, maybe, for the right pieces. But, Ristolainen's a good defenseman. I like Provorov more. He's under term and he's 25. I think he can get better. I think he's got more there. Get him out of that pit that is Philly and see what he can bring to the table. Maybe it doesn't work, but what they've done for the last 3-4 years hasn't worked either. I'd give it a shot. Also around the NHL, Florida continues to win. Like I said, they're just a well-oiled machine. What'll interest me down the stretch here of the postseason stretch is what happens with Marc-Andre Fleury, the Flower. I've heard reports that Washington is kicking tires on Marc-Andre Fleury. They would like to bring him in for a playoff run. Obviously, played in Pittsburgh for so long. He played against Washington in the 2018 Stanley Cup Final. So that would be super interesting. I don't know if he'd accept the deal there. I guess as of right now, he's got a full no move, so he can decide where he goes. But Edmonton, if I'm Marc-Andre Fleury, I'm not going to Edmonton because you're not winning a cup in Edmonton. I don't think you're winning one in Washington either. I understand why he wants to go to Vegas, quite frankly. Vegas, I think, can win a cup this year. You look at their division, I think the East is going to be a bloodbath to get through. I think the Western team who can get to the final is in a really good position to pick up the crumbs, to just scoop up what's left of the Eastern Conference and just put them to bed. That would interest me a ton. Jack Eichel back. You're going to have likely Mark Stone will sit out for the rest of the regular season. Riley Smith, Pietrangelo, Shea, you got a good team there. So if he could be in net, I understand why he would be intrigued by that opportunity. I thought at the beginning of the year, Colorado might be a deadline team that would look at him. I think Darcy Kemper is a good goalie. Yesterday, he played well yesterday, despite the Colorado Avalanche being trounced by the Boston Bruins. So I don't see Colorado as a fit, but where is he going to go is the biggest question. And St. Louis is an interesting one. They do have Binnington and Husso. I don't think they'd part with either. But, what teams are going to be interested in him? That's the thing. What teams are willing to pay the price for a guy like him? Rangers are set. Pittsburgh, who knows? If they feel like they can go on a run, maybe they would inquire on his services, because I think that would be something that they should look at. But I think his options are very limited. And unfortunately for him, I think unless it's a Vegas, which I don't think they're going to do, I think they're going to, unless Robin Lehner is severely hurt, then it makes all the sense in the world to reacquire Marc-Andre Fleury. I don't see a team that I look at and say they are a perennial cup favorite that he's going to be dealt to. I don't believe that with the Oilers. I look at Vegas, I look at Calgary in front of them, and I believe they're both better teams. Washington, I think every team in the East is better than the Washington Capitals. So I have very little faith there. Pittsburgh, I think Pittsburgh's a good team, but I like I like Carolina more, and I like, obviously, I like every team in the Atlantic more than the top three in the Atlantic more than I like Pittsburgh. So again, it gets a little wary there for Marc-Andre Fleury, but it won't be interesting to see where he ends up. Does he stay out west? Does he go back east come the end of this trade deadline? Edmonton Oilers, they're on a hot run. They lose Sunday night to the Minnesota Wild, but again, if I'm Edmonton, I'm asking about Marc-Andre Fleury. I'm asking about Braden Holtby. I'm asking about Anton Khudobin because, Jay Woodcroft can coach well. He can institute good systems, yada, yada, yada. Those mean jack shit if you don't get a save. And I look at this team and just say, well, they don't get enough saves. They don't get enough big saves from their goaltenders. And Mike Smith gets pulled the other night. I don't trust Koskinen to save my life. They're both guys that aren't going to win in the postseason. They didn't last year. So, and you get a porous defense. Marc-Andre Fleury would help. Maybe they can get a defensive system in place, but again, Oilers are on a hot run. McDavid and Draisaitl are playing better. That has a lot to do with it. But I still go back to their fatal flaw, and that is goaltending. Me and Shane was talking more about Colorado tomorrow. I watched their game yesterday against Boston. I saw some weaknesses in their game, and why I'm a little skeptical about them going on a deep playoff run. But also today, Aaron Rodgers came out. He broke up with his fiancee Shailene Woodley. Said, he just had a 12-day cleanse, whatever that means. He was on the Pat McAfee show. Said no decision is imminent, but who knows what's happening with Aaron Rodgers? Who knows what he's going to do? Does he stay in Green Bay? Does he go to Denver? Does he go to Vegas? We'll have to wait and see. But there's also, what happens with Carson Wentz in Indianapolis. I'm really intrigued there. But today was a sort of important day in the NFL calendar, because now until March 8th, so a couple weeks, you have the ability to franchise tag players that you want to keep on your roster. So what that means is, if you have a player on your roster that's going to be an impending unrestricted free agent, if you franchise tag this player, they cannot negotiate with other teams. They are signed with you, and you have till mid-July to negotiate a long-term deal. If you cannot come up with a long-term deal, that player then has the ability, can either sign the franchise tag, which it depends on position. I know for quarterback, it's close to $30 million a season as a franchise tag. But the big names out there are Devontae Adams, who will likely be franchise tagged by Green Bay, Jesse Bates the third in Cincinnati, the great free safety. Do they franchise tag him? They have a lot of money. I would, but it's a cheap organization. We'll wait and see there. There's names out there that we could see. I think also in the next couple of weeks, we'll see players get cut, veterans who are on deals, and teams will eat dead cap money so that they can part with players. One name that's hot in the rumor mill right now is Amari Cooper in Dallas. The guy just hasn't been putting up great numbers. He makes $20 million a season, and Dallas being so close to the cap, I wouldn't be surprised if Amari Cooper is not a Dallas Cowboy come week 1 of next season. So lots happening. We also had, the mix-up in NCAA. Me and Seamus talked about that tomorrow with the John Howard incident. And also get into, the Phil Mickelson, the Saudi Golf League, and the comments made by Rory McIlroy, which are really explosive. I give Rory a ton of credit for having the courage to come out, going up against Phil, the godfather of the golf world, if you will. But like I said, Seamus will join me tomorrow. We'll get into a lot of interesting topics. So Friday, big to the point announcement. Hope you guys can all join me live again, Facebook Live around 2 p.m. on Friday. It'll be available, throughout the day after that time. But stay tuned for the breaking news that day. I hope you guys can all join me, as I said. But have a great day, everyone. We'll talk tomorrow. Until then, this has been To The Point.